Hey, Julia Barzyk here from Wise Investigator. Today I'm going to talk to you about foundation funding. Now, what I'm going to talk about in this video relies heavily on information gathered at the AAAS meeting that took place in Denver in February of 2024. There was a panel discussion that was hosted by the Science Philanthropy Alliance, and I was fortunate enough to attend this discussion, had a chance to ask a question and make some good connections. And I think the value of what was presented there in that discussion was exceptionally high and very helpful because some of this information is a bit harder to find all in one place. If you are a PI who's looking at getting involved with foundation funding, you're wondering if this is something that's worth pursuing. I hope that this video will answer some of those questions for you and set you on your way. So the panel discussion, again, it was hosted and led by the Science Philanthropy Alliance. Specifically, it was led by Dr. Elise Hope. And the panelists were three faculty members from the state of Colorado: Edward Chung, an assistant professor from UC Boulder; Gordana Dukovic, a professor from UC Boulder; and Adrian Marshall, an assistant professor at Colorado School of Mines. So let's get started. All right, so what type of research might be well suited for foundation funding? One type of research would be interdisciplinary research, something that's not fitting well into NSF programs. And if you found yourself in this situation, then you know how challenging that could be. Personally, I believe that this is some of the most important research that we need to be supporting, but it doesn't matter what I believe here, so I won't get off on that tangent. But I really do feel for PIs who find themselves in this situation because it can really be challenging, right? To try to convince people from, quote, outside your field, and maybe that shouldn't be in quotes, but there's artificial distinctions, right? So the good thing about usually a smaller organization or a non-traditional organization, an organization that doesn't have the same the disciplinary divisions that our larger organizations do, be it a university or a big organization like NSF, is that they will usually not be as affected by what can be now artificial boundaries. So if you find yourself having this kind of struggle with the work that you want to do, foundations could be a good option for you. So philanthropy, funds from philanthropy can complement federal funds. So if you have an ongoing research project that's supported by federal funds, but there's an aspect of the work that you'd like to do that's maybe complementary or a little bit tangential or something a little extra, maybe a little more high risk that you might want to have an extra student on, those foundation funds could be suitable for that. Now, philanthropy can also support research that's at a different stage than what government research might support. Now, usually this is going to be something that's at an earlier stage, something that's maybe more like a proof of concept type award. Again, that something that may not fit in an NSF program, but perhaps once you do get some preliminary data, you get some progress on it, you may be able to make a stronger case for one of those conventional or traditional programs based on discipline. Now, specifically to discover exactly what type of research, right? I'm speaking broadly about types of research, but if you're wondering if the specific research topic that you want to investigate is supported at all by foundations or philanthropy, you're going to have to really go to Google and start looking into this using the search engine. It's really just rolling up your sleeves and searching for the information and, of course, talking to people. But the panel recommended Google as a way to start uncovering what funders are supporting the type of research that you want to do. Okay, so moving on to pitching to philanthropy. So the big thing here is that you definitely should not be submitting the same proposal that you wrote for a federal funder to a philanthropic organization or say a foundation. Now, this is for a number of different reasons, but the format, the length, and the content, the approach to the that you're going to use for the foundation proposals is going to differ than which you will use for the federal proposals. Now, there's a lot of variation among the foundations as well, so we'll get to that. But these are some very, very general statements. Generally, you will have a shorter application or shorter proposal for philanthropic funding. The proposal and your pitch, so if you're at an earlier stage than a proposal, your pitch will focus more on a big vision rather than getting into the weeds in a very technical topic. You want to emphasize the high potential for a big impact of your work. And you can go a little bit higher risk, again, generally, than what you will do when you're applying for funding from the government. Now, one comment that was made in this discussion was that if you're pursuing basic research and you want the foundation funding for something that's very basic, that making the policy relevance of the basic research very clear can be helpful. Now, the entire package very well may contain letters of recommendation, and those can be confidential letters of recommendation. So if you're asking someone to provide that for you, you would want to talk to that person about getting them something that they could work from, more than just your CV, but that would include your CV, that it might include some notes, some specific information that you would like them to include. Now, it's going to be their choice whether they include that or not, and they're submitting it again confidentially, but this does not mean that you cannot draft something and that you should not draft something up for them to work from. That will be very helpful to them, and it will make sure that they don't leave out things that you would like to have included. So going back, I think, to the risk factor here. So again, this is painting with broad strokes because it's not true that for every federal proposal you submit, the work needs to be like a third or a half done. I know that can be the case in some situations, but having worked somewhere where that was not the case, I just want to make the point here that that's not true for everywhere within the federal government that you could submit to. But the philanthropic funding generally will be more open to the high risk work, and you can make the case that their funding is going to provide a catalyst for new directions. Okay, so what is the application process like? Well, the panelists were all very clear that every foundation has its own goals and processes. So there's a lot of variability here in what the process will be like. It's not going to be standardized like it is in some ways across the government. Like generally, you might expect to have a 15-page project description or project narrative. But this is not going to be the case when you're applying for foundation funding. You are going to need plenty of lead time, as this is for a number of reasons, but especially for the letters of recommendation that you may need to gather. A spreadsheet with deadlines, keeping track of deadlines that are coming up for the next 2 years, was something that was recommended by one of the panelists as saying that helped them keep track of things. And again, this is not a standardized process across these organizations. So something like a spreadsheet and thinking even 2 years out is really the best practice. Now, you also want to get examples from colleagues who have submitted or hopefully won some awards, either the exact type of award you're applying for or something from that foundation. These examples can be very useful to you. And one difference in the valuation process for the federal versus the foundation funders is that you're going to want to ask subject matter experts for feedback generally on your federal submissions, before you make those submissions, because that's consistent with the kind of the qualifications of the people who are going to be evaluating your proposal. And alternatively, when you're submitting for the foundation funding, when you get feedback ahead of that process, you want to make sure to ask those from outside your field to give you feedback on your package. So again, there's a lot of variation among these philanthropic funders. Some of the applications will look somewhat similar to a federal application with a lot of documents and a kind of a big package, but others are going to be much shorter and have a reliance on these letters of recommendations. And some of the foundations can be very specific in what they're looking for. And so this is something to keep in mind too and read carefully when you learn about the opportunities. So another topic that was discussed here was how an existing relationship between one of these foundation funders and your institution might be able to help. And there was agreement that this is something that could help you. It should be pursued or investigated to see if there's anything to work from here. So look at newsletters, both from within your institution and from that foundation, to learn if there is any existing relationship already. Also use Google. This is a common theme here. Google to see if you can find anything going on between that funder and your institution. Ask colleagues about this, and you can reach out to the development staff at your institution. So the development staff are people who are in charge of managing donations to the university, fundraising, and other related type of activities. So you may not be used to interacting with them. You may not know who these folks are, but they are on your campus and they're going to be plugged into a lot of this type of information. So you could reach out to them as a resource and see if they could point you in the right direction, or maybe even introduce you to someone. All right. So one interesting topic that was discussed was the relationship that evolves or develops and then evolves maybe between the researcher and the funder. And so this could start out even in the application process, where the panelists had noted that you may have the opportunity to revise and resubmit and even go through an iterative process with these funders as part of the application process. So you may be getting a little bit more feedback and again, chance to revise what you've submitted. And now if you are funded, it's very likely that you will be seen as a member of this extended family that's part of this organization. You could be invited to annual meetings. You can be starting what hopefully could be a career-long relationship with this organization, provided great opportunities for networking and potential collaborations. And it definitely, it's most common that some type of relationship like this will develop where the organization is not looking at this as just a transactional thing where you're getting a one-time check and that's that. So if and when you are funded, you want to be aware that this is the opportunity to develop a relationship that could be very valuable, not just for more money coming in the future, but for the relationships and the impact that your work could have through those relationships. So again, another way that these organizations can try to provide value to those that they fund beyond the money would be things like inviting you on retreats. Some of these retreats might even include the opportunity for you to bring your family along. So, a family affair. So specifically advice for early career researchers who are looking at these opportunities. Well, first of all, the panelists encouraged early career researchers to not be intimidated by descriptions of what these foundations want on the website. It could sound very grand, it's very forward thinking. it could sound really big, and it's like, oh, does my research really, it's going to be that big or have that big of an impact, or at least in the time scale that they're looking for? Well, yes, it very well may. So don't undersell yourself, and don't be intimidated by the language that you see on those websites. Now, the funding rates can actually be higher with some of these foundations for a variety of reasons, one of which could be that the applications may require a university nomination. So that's going to limit the number of applications that come in. They also noted how competitive it is, can vary year to year. And they also noted that all of this advice really applies to both research funding and fellowships. So the review process can vary greatly. It could be similar to the federal review process. It could be very different. There's really no hard rules here. And something that's important for you to think about as an early career researcher for this, and even more broadly, is that there are organizations out there and opportunities with a focus on funding people, not projects. So this is where you want to make it clear, what your story is, what your motivating factors are, who you are, because they very well may be looking to consider you really as part of the package. You're always attached to your research, but this might be more explicitly the case. So keep that in mind. All right. So the question that I asked the panel, I think this is a very important one, of course, or I wouldn't have asked it, but what can you do beforehand to get information? I'm always encouraging PIs to reach out to program officers. So wanted to hear about how easy or recommended it is to do this with the foundations. Now, the response was that it varies greatly whether or not these organizations will have points of contact listed on their website. So, of course, you're going to look and see if they do. Because of this and how difficult or easy it could be to reach a person, some of these applications you'll submit blind, some you don't have to. And if you don't have to, then that's never recommended. Webinars could be a way to connect. You may want to keep your eyes open for webinars and then get on those, see who's presenting. They may have contact information there. They may be on LinkedIn. You could find them there. And the communication that you have before submitting a proposal, it could be something like a pre-proposal or a 2-pager, or it could be a short email, or it could be nothing at all. So anything along that spectrum. And definitely reaching out to the past winners and asking them what kind of communication and experience they had beforehand, before they submitted their application, if any will be helpful to you. They may be able to point you to someone that you can reach out to. So that wraps it up as far as what we learned from the panel discussion, but I want to leave you with my takeaways. So obviously, this foundation funding is a great opportunity. We want to consider anything that will give you a chance at getting that interdisciplinary work supported. We know how important discoveries come from things that are at the intersection of various traditional disciplines, and we want to support high-risk research. So this is an opportunity that you really should be pursuing, at least giving it some consideration and doing the investigation to see if there is something there for you. Now, it takes a lot of legwork. You heard me mention the word Google throughout this video numerous times. So PIs are often looking for, a directory. They're looking for somewhere where all the information is organized in a digestible way so that they can look for that one piece that they want or look for that one contact they want. And for many opportunities, that's just not there, even within the government, of course, and especially in this ecosystem. So it takes a lot of legwork. You're going to have to roll up your sleeves and Google and ask people and, follow up on emails and reach out to your institution's development office and introduce yourself, etc. So the thing is that many people are not willing to do that, right? They're just not willing to do that. So if you are willing to do that, then that's a wonderful opportunity for you where you've already left much of your competition behind because they're not willing to do that hard work, right? They're doing hard work, but they don't want to do that type of hard work. So don't look at this as a negative. Oh, I'm not going to be able to get this information without a big struggle. You can look at it as a positive to say, oh, a lot of people are just going to be flustered and frustrated by all of this and fail to stay organized, fail to think the 2 years ahead and make that spreadsheet or whatever it is. And I am willing to do it. So that therefore those opportunities are going to be open to you. And another point here, again, these are my takeaways, would be your online presence, at least at a basic level, is important. Because especially when you're submitting an application that's going to be reviewed by people, I mean, outside of academia, outside of your discipline, they may not have heard of you, even if you are a fairly big name in your field or your subfield. They may have never heard of you at all. They may have never even heard of your subfield of research. So they are going to Google, just like I'm suggesting that you should do this Googling. Other people will do the Googling. So having just a very basic but well thought out and filled out LinkedIn profile can really help you present yourself in a way where you are controlling the narrative and making a connection online with people, asynchronously and in a way that can really work to your advantage. So don't neglect having just a basic, minimum level online presence. Finally, the foundations provide a great opportunity for you to start building up a diversity of funders. And this can be very valuable to your career. And even getting a small amount of money can serve as what's called social proof for your idea that, someone else did make an investment in it. And when that's the case, that can give another decision maker a little bit more confidence about their making an investment, they're increasing an investment when you have some proof that somebody already did put money on your idea, even if it is a relatively small amount. Also, as we learned about with the family-like connections that you can make and the networking opportunities, there very well may be opportunities where you're invited to an event that is for everyone who is funded. So whether you received, $20,000 or someone else received $1 million, they may have access to the same type of networking opportunities and events. So don't just look at the dollar amount here.